All right there, I'm Jeff Sangpil with Keycode Media, and we're going to have a Q&A about what we've just seen. Dan is not going to be able to join us for the Q&A as he's doing a load-in at a local university for end-to-end remote live setup with NewTek and Panasonic and LiveView. So he definitely practices what he preaches. So he's out there getting dirty in the cold right now, well, or the warm Southern California. All right, let's kick off the Q&A, and anyone who's got any questions, please just toss them into the chat for Facebook Live and for YouTube and our own live stream on our website. Let's kick this off. Jason had a question regarding Tricaster, so this will be for Chris. Is the Tricaster allowing for the input display shown on the monitor for source, preview, and live feeds?
Repeat it. I think the question is if we can grab NDI previews of these different sources, right?
It says, is the Tricaster allowing for the input display shown on the monitor for source, preview, and live feeds? I mean, it kind of sounds like a multi-view question to me.
Right, yeah, so the multi-viewers are now enabled in NDI on the TC2 Elite. So turn on your 2 Elite and your multi-viewers will be enabled. You do have to enable the KVM feature. So no subscription, it's just part of the system. In the UI, there's a KVM. There is a monitor version and a full control version. Monitor will just make the graphics card outputs into NDI feeds, so you can use them in your remote production. Full control will allow you to remote control your Tricaster.
Very cool. Question for Kong on LiveView. Dan sort of quickly mentioned LiveView pipe, IP pipe. Can you expand on that? What does LiveView IP pipe do?
So what the LiveView IP pipe does is it allows a network bridge between the network connection on the LU encoders. There's 2 network ports on some of the devices, but what it's going to do is bridge one of those ports to the server that is transmitting to local network. So what that's going to allow you to do is it does a little network bridge that allows you 1 meg of connection. Once you start the mode, the remote camera that is connected to the LiveView encoder will be bridged into the local network of the server. And then from the local network of the server, you should be able to have your PTZ controls there, or CCU control, or whatever control you want within that 1 meg limitation.
Oh, very cool. Let's see here. Panasonic, how many cameras do you have that support NDI now? Are they all PTZ, or are there camcorder options? And what's the big difference to a camera that does full 4K?
Okay, so NDI is actually supported on all of our PTZ cameras, aside from our HR140, which is our outdoor camera. As far as the camcorder options, we do have a few camcorder options that actually support NDI output directly on them, specifically the CX series camcorders, CX350, CX10. So yes, absolutely. As far as the 4K goes, 4K is only available on native NDI. So currently, the only outputs that we have available for 4K NDI would be on the UE100 and UE150.
Very cool. We got a follow-up question on I think it's on the IP pipe from Brett. He's asking, does color correction have a lag? If you're trying to run a CCU, is there going to be a lag between adjustments and seeing those come back?
There will be a lag, but we've had clients use this, and the lag is not too difficult to manage around. But you're talking about maybe at most a second, probably less than that, depending on the network connection.
Very cool. Yeah, I mean, we can't get better than the laws of physics these days. We've been trying, but just can't get over that. Einstein, you. So a question from Jim, and this is going to be for Chris. Does the Tricaster provide frame sync for SRT streams?
So when we're bringing the frame syncs on all our inputs, so you're going to bring in the SRT through, what of our traditional input paths. You do have to open up a different menu to grab the IP feed, but we're going to be doing all that syncing locally, just like we do with all the other IP sources. So yeah, you're going to be fine there.
Cool. Follow-up question from Jason. How can all of this work with remote presenters? And I guess that kind of gets into the question about, maybe the LiveView app and a couple other things.
So on the live view side, we have what we call a video return server. It has two SDI inputs. You can input the video into the server itself. And then within the remote units, the LiveView LU600, the LU800, we can display that video on the screen itself, or we can have an HDMI cable go into a monitor and display it on a bigger monitor. We also have the ability to send that video return feed to a Android or Apple app. With the LiveView Control app, once you have that loaded, you can go look at the video return server and get the display or get the video on the phone itself. Coming soon is a web platform so that we can put it onto a web page so remote people can go there and view it on the computer.
Very cool. Let's see, there's a question here about, can you explain the difference between Live Call Connect and Skype TX? Is it the same? And then that kind of dovetails into another question that we've gotten. The Tricaster 2 is new. What's different from the old Tricaster?
Sure. Okay. So let's tackle the first question and I'll lead into the second one. Live Call Connect is your connectivity platform with a lot of the contemporary virtual meeting rooms. So things like Zoom, Teams. I think you guys outlined a couple in the presentation. The idea here is we made a one-stop app to make your life as simple as possible from an engineering perspective. Install the respective applications. So let's just use Zoom as an example. You install Zoom on the TC2. One of your multi-view monitors now has the ability to operate as an app desktop, which will showcase only Live Call Connect certified apps on it. So it's not just like the Windows browser, essentially. It'll give you only the installed applications. So the Internet Explorer, which I think the Edge is the new one that they have, and Zoom would be on there. You load up Zoom, join a Zoom room, and then with 2 clicks of a button, you can grab up to 9 callers from that Zoom room as inputs in your Tricaster. So if you're doing remote virtual meeting room style productions and Zoom Teams, this is a godsend. The number of computers you normally have to wrangle to do this and the number of failure points that you're going into, and from an engineering perspective of network configurations and capture devices and all this stuff, it can be sort of daunting. And just be able to open up the Tricaster, click live, and click assign to inputs. It's an amazingly simple workflow. Where that differentiates itself from Skype TX, Skype TX is very one-to-one. So we give you some base Skype TX channels in the Tricaster. We have expansion models to give you more additional channels of Skype TX. Those are going to do individual calls, and it's based on Microsoft's platform. So that's traditional Skype and now Teams. So you can call individuals in any of those organizations. It isn't sort of a group application, but the beauty of the TC2 Elite is that you get all of these options. And so you kind of want to work with what the people at home are the most used to. I think all the guys in this call have been on probably every video conferencing application known to man, because that's part of our job. But like your home user who's maybe your local high school coach or a doctor or something like that, you want to make that as smooth and easy as possible. So if they know Zoom, put them on Zoom. Don't make their life complicated. And I think that's one of the cool benefits of Live Call Connect. And then sort of the part 2 question is, what's new in the TC2? You guys covered a lot of this in the presentation, but a ton more inputs. It is a 32 input system, excuse me. More support for SRT, bigger 4K workflows. It can also do a hybrid 4K and 1080 workflow, where 4 of the outputs will be in 4K mode and the other 4 can be individual 1080 feeds. Tons of stuff underneath the hood in the TC2 Elite. It's an 8ME system. It has output control, which sounds like something that everything would have. But when we're talking about output control, we're talking about controlling NDI outputs explicitly. So like your own little NDI subrouter that you can mess with. It's 4 DDRs. There's a lot packed into the 2 Elite. And I definitely recommend reaching out to the guys at Keycode and getting maybe a more intimate demonstration if you need to see that. But there's a whole, it is a big upgrade. And if you were an older fan of new tech and you remember the Tricaster 8000 when it came out, when that was sort of the pinnacle at the top of the mountain, the TC2 Elite in a lot of ways has sort of taken over for that. And it has been, taking off my hat, it's been an amazing product to work with, myself doing even at home productions. Trying to do like your own at home podcast is super easy when you can throw 3 guys on Discord, click a button and go. Like I don't have to think about all the minutia of producing this kind of stuff.
So if there's anyone who needs to produce podcasts at home, talk to us. We'll get you hooked up with a TC. That'd be great. Looks like this is a question for Rob. Have the cameras been used in virtual set environments?
Absolutely. So the UE150 and UE100 are actually rather unique in the fact that both of them can actually send out 3D data, which is required for AR and VR productions. So typically in the past, creating an AR environment or a VR environment was pretty intensive. That's the reason why you didn't see a lot of just live shots willy-nilly, just, hey, yeah, let's do it. Because a lot of times what you'd have to do is render an entire 3D environment. And then not only that, you had to make sure that the camera was tracked as far as where it moved so that we can adjust accordingly. So it's a lot more difficult than just throwing up a green screen and just putting a plate behind it. It doesn't work that way.
Mm-hmm.
But with the UE100 and UE150, we can now take the 3D data that tracks exactly where the camera head is in that XY axis in that space, so that software like Disrupt AR. So this all works directly with the Unreal Engine and allows us to basically take that, and now we don't need to add a big head on top of our tripod on our camera to tell us where the camera is. We can just take this data coming out of a PTZ. And if any of you have ever seen the UE150 PTZ, it is from the ground up built as a true broadcast camera. It's being used all over the place, so it's a beautiful looking camera. So now we actually have a true solution to take a camera and be able to put it in a AR VR world and make it a lot easier to be able to create these beautiful live moving sets, and it's a lot less cost prohibitive than it was in the past.
I was gonna say, Rob, we're talking about like a dramatic decrease in price. I actually didn't know that capability. I just learned something myself. And,
Yeah.
I knew New Tech is part of Viz Group. And so, there's lots of Viz RT setups in very high-end
Yes.
facilities doing this stuff. But,
Yeah.
this was not something that like the home gamer, the average consumer could get involved with without a lot of money behind it.
It was a huge deal, yeah, because you usually had to add on a piece that a lot of times would cost more than the camera itself just to track where the movement of the camera went. And then that coupled with the software, you still didn't directly get the video information, so you had to figure out how to tie in the video information from that point, and then couple it all together and then have somebody run it. So now that 3D data just comes, it's already on the network that the PTZ is on. You use the Unreal Engine plugin, and now you get that XY axis data. Once you have your your AR VR world created, you can now just bring that data in and it reacts directly to the camera. So yeah, very, very easy and nice way to be able to do it. If you guys Google it or look on YouTube, there's a ton of demos and tests being done right now with the UE150 and Unreal Engine. So it's really exciting, really, really exciting.
And not to drop any names on shows that use that sort of technology, but it sounds like this is the way. So, possibly. A couple questions here for Kong. We've got, how many 1080p 60 streams can you send with the live view? It says 8,000. I'm assuming that means 800.
800.
Yep. And does the live view only take HDMI, or is there also SDI?
So on the LU800, the base or the unit itself comes with a license for 1 channel, but you can get the Pro 2 for two cameras and Pro 4 for 4 cameras to be able to send 4 simultaneous 1080p 60 video back to a quad channel server, so that it has to go to the same server so that everything gets processed in time with one another.
Awesome.
What was that second part of the question?
HDMI versus SDI on both transmit and receive sides.
So yes, on the LU600, it supports both SDI and HDMI. On the LU800, depending on the model you get, we have a model that is HDMI only and then a model that is SDI only. If you use one format the majority of the time, you can always get a little converter box to convert it to a HDMI, let's say if it's SDI unit, just so that you can handle it while it's built in both formats.
There's always little digital glue pieces from our friends at AJA or Blackmagic. They're everywhere. We can find them. And we have plenty in stock downstairs too, as far as I know. Here's an interesting question that came up from Brad. Has anyone ever utilized a solution to control DMX lighting data over remote IP?
I don't know if anybody has ever done that, but as long as it's under the 1 meg limitation, we should be able to control the lighting equipment as well. I know some people use it for scoreboard information, getting the scoreboard back to the studio so that they can put it in their graphics system. As far as like high school sports, different things like that, they have successfully done that with it.
So we've worked with a company called Blacktrax, which does auto tracking via IR emitters. And their platform it was originally developed for DMX lighting as follow spots. So their platform can actually convert the data directly to DMX control information. So I know that there's solutions out there. I think part of it may be somewhat have to be homegrown in certain instances, but I absolutely know that the solutions are out there.
Awesome. Yeah, and that's I've heard about that in a couple different spots as well as being something folks are doing. DMX isn't that heavy of a protocol.
No.
On, off, brighter, darker. I mean that's kind of it. Let's see. James had a follow-up question, and this is for Kong. So the LU800 signals are not muxed, if he understood correctly?
Yeah, they're not muxed. They're separate transmission through the same encoder.
Yeah, there are other solutions that have muxing. LiveView is not one of those. There's some REMI pieces that are out there. Alrighty. I guess this would be a question for Chris. Can the scan converter also send audio from web pages playing?
Yeah, so scan converter's got a couple of options when you're interacting with it. You got different audio options. You can even pair another source for a webcam. So you just choose the option you want. For most objectives, just the system like Windows audio will get you what you need, or the respective operating system you're working on. If you have it broken out, you can get a little fancy with installing like an application that generates its own audio pathway. Something like there's some freeware that does this, but then you could sort of route then the application audio to that, and then you can have NDI grab that particular audio. So at this point, I say like there's engineering ways you can tackle these things more particularly, but at an easy glance, open the NDI tool and just have it push the audio along. So it'll do audio and video.
Yeah, they're internal software audio routing applications like Soundflower that you can run, which you can route internally inside the computer.
Which also comes in handy if you want one web page to stream out and you need to hear a different web page like the return.
Correct.
Right.
So question from Brad. With NDI, has your IP been limited to 8-bit, or is anyone able to do 10-bit since the last NDI update? I guess that's kind of up to everybody.
NDI, the protocol, I think, is 16-bit. I think as we stand today, we're at 16-bit capacity, and it's always recognize that we developed the protocol at New Tech without necessarily having the products. And like, you'll sort of notice that this happens. We push major NDI updates, and then products sort of now can take advantage of that stuff. And so a lot of the waves of the TC2 fall off the back of massive updates in NDI 4 and NDI 4.5 and things like that. So as we make the protocol do more, then the products can do more. And I think it's sort of, you'll see sort of the design and application for some of this stuff happen after it exists. We are always pushing on the forefront of what NDI is capable of. So whether that's bigger resolutions or different resolutions, or different kinds of color data, or what have you, that's always going to lead the way first, and then we can go over to all the third-party manufacturers and see what those guys are capable of. I think most of our stuff at New Tech is very much broadcast-centric in terms of what we're trying to accomplish, so we use that as a standard. But the protocol itself in NDI is fairly robust.
And the other thing also to be careful of is, hey, I've gone from an 8-bit to a 10-bit to a 16-bit, and I've filled the pipe, but I didn't change my switch. I could have some problems. I'm trying to flow a lot more data in with this protocol down the line, and that's as Dan had mentioned, that's where we start talking about, okay, do you need a dedicated production network for your NDI streams, keeping it away from the rest of your IT infrastructure or your file-based stuff that's running post-production somewhere.
Yeah, that's kind of where it's really gone. It's become math now rather than how many cables can I stuff through that hole in the wall. That's where it was before. Now it's like, okay, how many streams can I fit down this single pipe that I just installed? But that's always the key to any deployment, and I think that's one of the key things that key code and you guys are fantastic at, is being able to suss all that information out and make sure that what you're deploying and what you're putting in there is the right thing for what the client needs, based on what their ideas and 10,000 foot view is.
Yep. It's kind of like the idea of, just because I have outlets doesn't mean I have capacity on my UPS to serve more cables.
Right. It's a balance, right? Because everything is getting easier because it's all on IP now, right? But at the same time, it's getting more complicated because at the same time, we have to now deal with how do we build out these networks? How do we work properly with, the IT department? Because especially if you're talking about larger companies, the IT departments are going to be controlling those networks, but a lot of times those networks typically need to be a little bit more open than a traditional, corporate IT environment, because the traditional corporate IT environment, as you guys all know, is very locked down, right? Just to get a email attachment past some of them is ridiculous. So how do we move into this new era of dealing with these massive networks? So it's easier in the sense that now we pretty much everybody already has infrastructure to be able to accept this stuff, so we don't have to put a bunch of copper in now, and there's no net new installation for that side of it. But at the same time, we have to be even more aware of what we're doing on that network, and properly deploying them, properly maintaining and managing them. So I think our network knowledge needs to raise up a little bit as video engineers, but at the same time, it's going to be a balance, right? It's going to be a push and pull. So as we look at things being easier from a 10,000 foot view, yeah, hey, it's all networked and we just put everything on a network and now we have everything available to us. At the same time, there are challenges that we're going to come up against time and time again as we move forward because of this new ground that we're breaking, right?
Yep. And
So
we have to also remember that, okay, an SDI stream in HD is 1.5 gigs a second minimum.
right.
Then it gets to 3G, then it gets to
Well,
12G, depending on what you need to feed down it. So if you're taking all of that same bandwidth, even though NDI is a great codec that knocks that down, that compresses that down a bit, you still have a lot of data moving through your switches.
yes.
And if your switches are just used to a couple spreadsheets and a little bit of email and maybe some Facebook if you're lucky, you're gonna have some challenges trying to push a lot of streams of NDI through that same network. And that's where you look at the idea of, okay, we had an SDI router, let's have an NDI router that's separate from everything else.
And that's exactly kind of the point that I was getting to, is specifically that you have to treat it the same. You have to look at it the same. Like before, it was a completely different network, whether it was copper or whatever we were dealing with before fiber. It's the same idea. It's like, so we still need to keep this data and these pipes separated. So there's a lot more management to it. So, but yeah, absolutely.
And we're getting better with this as well. We have all kinds of NDI information flowing. The NDI team is growing as part of BizRT Group, so you'll see more and more that it goes along. We also, like, NDI as a protocol continues to tackle this stuff better. But at the end of the day, there's a conversation, I think, to everyone's point. This is a great reason to have a powerful dealer like Keycode at your side to say, like, hey guys, this is what we're trying to do, and broaching those conversations with the IT folk, because sometimes Sometimes the answer is no, because they just don't know what you're talking about. And then 10 minutes into the conversation, we have these conversations all the time at New Tech. They're like, oh, okay, so you guys need your own switch to do, like, you guys need your own you're gonna manage that then, or they're willing to own it, somebody like LinkedIn, where they're like, yeah, no, we're gonna maintain all of that because that's part of what we're doing. So different teams interact differently, but we can broach those conversations. There's information on the New Tech site, and that's going to grow. There's more and more New Tech certified NDI specialists growing out there. There's ways to get trained and learn all that stuff. So as that all becomes more real, you're going to have a lot more points of contact. But working with a strong dealer is going to be my first recommendation, because you guys have done this a ton of times, literally actively as we're on the call, this is being installed. But also you guys have that sort of knowledge base to go back and say, this is going to be easiest in this pathway, especially when we talk about at the city level, government level, where the restrictions are more than just being safe. It's like, then there's the government's regulation that's put on this, and we want to make sure that this is even feasible to approach those conversations. Having Keycode at your site is going to be useful.
Right. Absolutely. It's absolutely correct. I'm glad you said that, Chris, specifically because, look, NDI is amazing. It's great. It looks fantastic, but, and I'm sure Chris will be the first one to tell you this, you can't use it in every environment. It's not going to be the be all end all solution for every single situation that and that's why you reach out to people at Keycode, because they'll be able to really look at your environment, look at your situation, say, hey, look, yeah, we're going to run all these sources NDI and they're perfect for this because they're all running from here. But this, these feeds coming from across the country over open internet, that's got to be SRT, because there's just no other way that we're going to be able to accomplish this. Or maybe we take this live feed from live view here, but that's what brings it together. That's what ties the technologies together. And Keycode is fantastic at being able to tie those technologies together and make it work for their clients. I've seen time and time again where we've supported installations, and I was on the phone yesterday with a Keycode engineer, and we're going over an installation, and the best thing about it is that they have direct connections to us, and they can call us at a moment's notice and say, hey, this is going on, what do you think about this, what should I do about that, and we're able to kind of walk them through the process. And the beauty of it is the fact that we were all brought in at the very beginning. This wasn't a brand new thing like, hey, I'm doing this install, and I'm sorry calling you last minute, but no, I know about this install because I was talked about, and the architecting of this solution months before, when they were going through the planning stages, and they're asking questions like, hey, do you think this would work? Will this solution be viable? And we're able to kind of help along that side. So we love dealing with dealers that engage us on every level like that.
I feel a warm fuzzy. Thanks. So we got two questions from Joe Davenport. First is about firewalls, Cisco or Palo Alto network security. Can this be integrated? And I think we can get to that later. And then he's asking about integration with Sd-Wan, which is software-defined wide area networking. Anybody had any run-ins with that yet?
On certain levels, not. I haven't dug deeply into it, but there was a deployment that we did at a large corporate entity that have over 100 of our cameras, that we had to work with their IT department every step of the way, because the way they ended up deploying this was not only across their main campus, but across all their campuses across the country. So at some point there was a deployment of Sd-Wan. We worked through it. I didn't have a ton of involvement through it, but I know that it can be done. It can be worked with and dealt with. So.
Yep. And I would think that there's an overall bandwidth to any solution, regardless of whether it's software defined or hardware defined. And like what Chris was saying before, it's a math exercise. Add up what you're going to need to do, add up what you're going to, put 20% on top of that, because it's just always a good idea to have a little bit of overhead. And then, then you can have those discussions as to, okay, am I going to be able to move all this stuff through here? Now let's start talking about getting protocols from point A to point B. Let's see if we got any more. There was also the question about firewalls. And my experience generally has been that you're going to need to open up certain ports for live view, certain ports for SRT streams. That's going to be a discussion.
Control protocols, yeah, all of that. But it can all be worked through. And typically what we do in those cases, we'll sit down with the IT department, with your integrator, with key code, and just map it all out. We map out the network, we draw it out so that you can see a visual representation of how it looks. In the past, it was all the copper cables that we would actually draw. Now it's slightly different because it's a lot of networking, but at the same time, it can all be established. It can all be developed. The firewalls can still be up. We don't have to just completely tear them down in order to do this stuff. It's typically ports, and with Panasonic and our control protocols, we can typically be variable, so we can work within there for the most part. So if there are specific ports that your IT department has already set aside for being able to allow pass through like this, we can usually work within that. So.
And the other piece to look for is, if one of your requirements is going to be a stateful packet inspection, you need a firewall that has the power to do that. Because I've been in environments where, hey, I've got a 10 gig pipe out to the outside, but I got a firewall that only does 280 megabits a second as stateful, and that's not helpful.
That's very key. Yes.
Your bottleneck.
Exactly. Yeah, the bottleneck's going to be somewhere. All right. There was one last statement there. Jason was asking if he can get some diagrams of what that looks like, and I think we can work out to get that. When Dan gets back from doing that install, maybe I'll just have him toss a diagram over to you of what they did today, and I think that will more than fit the bill of what you're looking for. But my apologies to Matt Damon. We're out of time. So, Pong, Rob, Chris, thanks for joining me today. And
thanks for having me.
If anybody's got any questions, please, you can still toss them in the chat. We'll try to follow up on everything. And we hope everyone else has a great Thursday.